Using heartbeats as song bass, right theme song for the ICU.
Intentionally competent.
Providing intensive care for global mind. Tackling war propaganda, power to put global conflicts under the microscope. Exposing the system's lies and hidden hands that keep the war machine alive. From Gaza to Tehran, Washington to Tel Aviv, we dig into the facts, the headlines skip, the history they distort, and the human costs they bury. No political PR, no sanitized sound bites, just raw, verifiable truth, served with moral clarity and zero fear. In the ICU, we don't just treat the symptoms, we diagnose the disease. Hearing never ends, we reframe always while sending love to our nervous systems.
Welcome back to ICU, where inner consciousness is unraveled and the intentionally competent you is invited to break the trance of spiritual seduction and return to the ground of truth. Yeah, in ICU, as you all know, we don't rant, we refrain. And I'm still here, still your reluctant disaster crisis therapist to the national and global psyche, still seated across from Uncle Donald, but now across from a rising tide of pulpits, platforms, and prayers being used not to heal the nation, but to harden it. Pulpits that confuse power for presence. Armchair therapy, this will never be. This is spiritual trauma triage. Because scripture misused is violence disguised as virtue. Let me run that back. Because scripture misused is violence disguised as virtue. Let that sit on your nervous system for a second. Today's episode in ICU is titled False Flags and Faith Triggers: How Spiritual Language is Used to Justify Violence. This episode takes us into the heart of weaponized religion, where scripture becomes spectacle and prophecy becomes propaganda. Let us begin. We begin by addressing sanctified violence. It's not new. It's a historical pattern. And I can tell you unequivocally, this didn't start with Trump, and it's not going to end with him. Empires have always used religious language to justify conquest, sanctify slavery, excuse genocide, silence dissent. When you hear phrases like manifest destination, chosen people, divine order, righteous war, what? Your nervous system should be vibrating. These weren't theology. These were cover stories. Religion didn't fall from grace. Faith has never fallen from grace. It was conscripted, weaponized to protect empire, not to empower the people. And now, in the 21st century, it's happening all over again. And we start by unraveling this 21st century reimagining or reappearance by looking at Trump and the new apostolic reframing of power. Let's say it plainly. Uncle Donald didn't have to earn spiritual loyalty. He only had to echo the mythology. Understand that. Uncle Donald did not have to earn spiritual loyalty. All he had to do was what? Echo the mythology. And the mythology is what? That America is God's chosen nation. That masculinity is inherently righteous. That political opponents are demonic. That his enemies were enemies of God. Christian nationalist prophets declared him what? Anointed, the chosen one. Pastors blessed him on stage. Evangelicals said, God can use anyone. But what is the deeper truth? The deeper truth is this. They didn't anoint him despite his cruelty. They anointed him because of it. Because cruelty felt like control, and control felt like safety to them. Cruelty felt like control, and control felt like safety to them. So let's examine fifth triggers and false flags in modern speech. You have to listen for it. The language is everywhere. You hear things like spiritual warfare, which has become a euphemism for attacking people who disagree with you. Religious liberty becomes the right to discriminate with divine protection. Prayer, that becomes a performance to avoid protest. God's plan becomes a bypass for collective accountability. These aren't just rhetorical flourishes. These are fifth triggers designed to sedate the nervous system and suppress moral imagination. It's not just false theology. It's spiritual anesthesia. And all this leads to what? Spiritual betrayal as religious trauma. Let's name the pain. For many, especially queer people, survivors of purity culture, Black and brown communities, evangelicals, this moment isn't just political, it's personal, and deeply so. Because the same churches that once baptized you are now blessing state violence, are now platforming abusers, and are now quoting scripture to justify silence. This is not theological disagreement. It is spiritual betrayal, and betrayal lives in the body. And it sounds like this. Why didn't they say something? How did they not see it? Was I ever really safe? All these are troubling questions to your nervous system. All of them. But we recenter back in ICU and engage in our ICU practices to help us to leverage our personal internal controls to tap into our inner authority for higher living. The ICU practice for this week is reclaiming the sacred from the violent. This week's practice is sacred reclamation. And we do that by first and foremost what? Making a list of faith triggers? What phrases make your body tighten, even if they are biblical? Have you heard this? Obey your leaders. Turn the other cheek. God is in control. Write them down. Bless the reaction. It's wisdom, not rebellion. And ask yourself this: who benefits from this interpretation? So every time you hear a scripture quoted in public, ask, does this verse protect the vulnerable or the powerful? Seek living scripture in action. Who in your life embodies sacred truth? Not just theologically, but somatically. Through how we love, how we protect, how we confront, and how we serve. Let their witness remind you what God feels like, not just what God is said to want. Rewrite a trigger. Put it in your book. Take one of those verses with your own breath. Take a verse that's been weaponized, breathe it into healing. And we can do this by, for instance, so let's say somebody says, wives, submit to your husbands. We reclaim that. Let there be mutual reverence, rooted in trust and consent. That's an example. There's a plethora of those. And we can rewrite some of these trigger verses with your own breath. So in closing, let me offer you this final truth. The divine does not require domination. I can't say this any simpler than that. The divine does not require domination. And the sacred is never threatened by your wholeness. If someone has to silence your nervous system to speak for God, they're not serving God. They are serving themselves in God's name. And your healing is holy resistance. Be brave. Thank you for joining me this week in ICU. We have a lot of ground to cover. We have a lot of work to do to reclaim ourselves, because every second of the day we are being reprogrammed to meet up with what empire wants. Reclaim your body. So next week in ICU, we will target the compassion con, when civility protects oppression. That's just a clean follow-up from this episode. Until then, remember to always carry what serves you, release what doesn't, and keep walking forward with your ancestors at your back and your inner compass ahead as your guiding staff. May you diagnose wisely, resist kindly, and reimagine boldly. As always, subscribe, share, like, please engage with us. We need your engagement. We feed off of that as much as we like you to feed off of what content we provide to you. But always remember to breathe and never, ever forget to send love to your nervous system. ICU.
Using heartbeats as song bass, right theme song for the ICU.
Potentially competent.
Providing intensive care for global mind. Tackling war propaganda, power to put global conflicts under the microscope. Exposing the system's lies and hidden hands that keep the war machine alive. From Gaza to Tehran, Washington to Tel Aviv, we dig into the facts the headlines skip, the history they distort, and the human costs they bury. No political PR, no sanitized sound bites, just raw, verifiable truth, served with moral clarity and zero fear. In the ICU, we don't just treat the symptoms, we diagnose the disease.